All right, then we'll start now. Can you hear me? Hello. Adrian, I see you also here. Nice. Okay, then I can skip my intro slides here that I had made here. Web test. And not the least, actually the real work, the Mist browser. Anybody remember? Who remembers the Mist browser to do like Konstantin's move here? Huh? What?
LOL.
Yeah. You tried to replace it here with your centralized website.
I need to replace it.
Yeah, but I mean that was okay. Let's start about the real topic here. So I called it the state of the LSP ecosystem, and you probably all wonder what the LSP ecosystem is. Yeah, we make that up. So I'm not sure who is very aware of what I have been doing the last 3 years. Basically, yeah, I've been working on Lukso. Lukso is a blockchain that we are building and launching very soon. It's a EVM chain, so it's within the Ethereum ecosystem. It runs the Casper consensus like Ethereum 2.0 will do. And it's dedicated to what we call the new creative economy. So everything that people start to hype about now, when you look about NFTs, we hyped about it 3 years ago. So you're late to the party. No. No, but this is really the idea is to create a dedicated network for this more non-financial use cases, right? Things that are more interesting to people that come from social media, that use the internet today, where it's not about money or token sales, all of these things. There's some terms that we coined in our white paper, like cultural currencies and your universal profile, digital identities, digital certificates, how we call NFTs. And we were thinking about new creative use cases. One of them is, for example, digital fashion that's becoming a thing. If you've never heard about that, you're late to the party too. No, digital fashion is definitely becoming a very big thing soon. But in order to really make this whole new blockchain experience possible, we need to solve a fundamental problem that we have in blockchain. And it's not scalability. That's also a problem. But it's actually how do you really use this stuff, right? How do you interact with blockchain? And most of the time today, you all probably know, that's how the experience looks like, right? You have some keys, and once your keys are gone, your stuff is gone. That's why it's so tedious to make people, onboard them, because you have to send them through literally 2 hoops. One is back up your key for stuff they don't even care about, and second, get some ether or whatever network you're on because you want to do something on this network. To go one step back, what is LSPs? So I coined the term ERC, Ethereum request for comment, back then when I proposed ERC20. And the idea was really we request for comment, and then people come with comments, and then we make a standard. Turned out that the ERC discussion and the proposal literally became the standard and the term for the standard. So to correct this now, we call it Lukso standards proposals. So, because that actually then makes a bit more sense. Obviously, if you have if it's an ERC or if it's a LSP, this is all EVM smart contract standards, so they work on all EVM chains. But LSP is in the LIBS repository, Lukso improvement proposals, and sounds cool. So yeah, this is kind of the experience that we have right when we're thinking about blockchain. It's write down 12 words, and probably the most experience. I guess the money's already gone with what's in these words. But the interesting thing is that really the experience is okay, wow, I have to write down these words, and they take a screenshot, send it to iCloud, and that's where the secure secret phrase that lives, right? The other thing is when we're thinking about NFTs, and it's all the hype now, right? The NFT world right now, it's a bit of a joke. But it's actually not because it's not cool and fun. but the way of how it's architectured on a smart contract level and how it functions on chain, right? It's basically, you have a registry contract, which probably is the marketplace. Let's say it's super rare, for example, like this, right? And then there's some mint IDs that are issued with some URLs that are linked from it, that are simple JSON files. They're mostly stored on IPFS, because then there's a hash in the link. And then there's this little address you see here, right? The 5C CF9. This is the important thing, right? This address is the real important thing. This website profile here is actually irrelevant, because once this website is gone, that profile is gone, right? And assuming that super rare or rareable will be there forever is a bit foolish. But what you see on chain is really just this registry NFT, where that random key generated an NFT. And 2 years in the future, probably nobody will look back and think, ah, that was Roger's address, because I remembered 5CF9. And that's exactly the problem we're having. On-chain is not transparent, it's not really clear, there's no real provenance, and it's more gimmicky, because you don't really create an NFT that you as a creator own, that you can really modify, customize, and that can have a life in the future. It's literally just a hard-coded URL JSON with a mint ID. And because you were the first issuer or the first creator of that, somehow that makes it more important than others. And that's going to change. I proposed a standard called ES75 that probably people heard about. Actually, Fabian, you built an implementation, tried to modify things and doing it in an upgradable way, which was very interesting. And there was this, so this was 2017, and there was this Origin Protocol people, they created this alliance, and a bunch of people signed up, and lots of people said, amazing, we have to use this identity standard. Didn't happen really yet, because nobody really took the lead and really moved that forward as I kind of envisioned it should happen. You know, long story short, here we are with Lukso, it's super essential, so I'm now moving this forward, what I started there. And the smart contract standard, and now we're coming to the technical part. So it's actually a very simple standard that consists out of 2 parts. And it almost looks ridiculous simple, right? Because it's really just a smart contract that has one single owner. It has a key value store that you can set the data and get the data from, and it has an execute function. So the ES75Y is the Y, yeah, like, you know, data, set data, get data, and the X is the execute. I thought that's cool. And it has some events. So the very minimal version of 75 is this. That smart contract standard can be used for actually a lot of things, and especially also separated. It can be used for a lot of things. And that really just became also more clear to me over the years, really thinking about this. How much flexibility does this give you to smart contracts and creating things? Not just like, for example, a profile, but also things like NFTs or even smart contracts that not somehow need to be very flexible over time and maybe have information that can be changed over time so that other smart contracts can interact with it in a more, more modern way or more upgradable way. And it's in simple form, so the initial idea was to create a smart contract-based identity. I don't really like the term identity because identity always has this kind of heaviness to it. I start to differentiate between soft identity and hard identity. In my opinion, hard identity is like your passport data, your health data. It's the stuff that you really care about. You're very concerned whether you put this, and you probably will not want to put this anywhere. And then there's soft identity, that's more what everybody's using all the time, right? Your Twitter account, your Facebook, your gamer account, your Steam, your little Discord icon. Yeah, that's the soft identity. That's something you lose, handling more loose, you're upgrading, you're changing all the time. And it does not need to represent you as a person, but it's also a identity, right? And what blockchain does really well is it allows you to verify things. You have a very high level of transparency. So if you make a public account, a blockchain is a pretty good way to do that, right? Because you have a very verifiable, retrievable thing. It's kind of accessible everywhere all the time. But you could also have an anonymous account, right, that just looks like, Mickey Mouse and does stuff on chain. That's literally how we are currently doing it on every blockchain, right? Except that Mickey Mouse is a key, right? And it has no picture.
There are pictures.
There are pictures?
The identicons.
There are pictures, you're right. We made up pictures on purpose. They are also very important for us, user 75 accounts. Like you see here in the corner there, by the way. So, I mean, the thing is, when you make a smart contract-based account, you can actually make them look like Web 2 profiles. You can give them a look and a feel like a real account system. While at the same time, they have all the power of like a private key on chain or a public key on chain, right? It can interact with smart contracts, it can be owner of something, it can deploy smart contracts, it can literally execute any smart contract to anything because of a generic execution function. But it can do this, and it can also have information. The other benefit is it's controllable in a more flexible and more complex way. So the way of how we deal with keys is we have a private key. That's a problem because when you lose a private key, the key is gone, right? Your address is gone. And also, you cannot really change this private key, you cannot change the secret, right? It's like hard tied together. With a smart contract-based account, I can have a simple owner that's just a key, but I can also have some key that I replace later with a better key. But I can also have a smart contract that actually manages that profile. So I can have a key manager that actually has multiple keys. Some of them can again be smart contracts, it can be even more. You can build a very complex permission system. For example, we will very soon standardize LSP6, which is basically a key manager standard, and that allows you to add keys that you can give different permissions. For example, you can say a key can execute smart contracts, or a key can actually set data on your account, or a key can actually change keys, or a key is just meant to sign, so that to execute anything, it should just sign messages, and stuff like this. And that can be all stored nicely in your 75 account. But really important is also, when you have a smart contract, now you can also accept relay transactions. That thing down there. That means now we can even improve the onboarding of how you interact with blockchain. Because we can literally make anybody send a transaction for you, as long as it's signed by you, your key manager, or your universal profile is the one who will execute. So we can completely change the way of how we interact on chain. And on the other hand, because we have this key value store, right, we can attach any kind of information or link any kind of stuff. So what I was just showing before, we can link a JSON file that looks like something, has a profile picture, has a name or a description, has some web links, stuff that's interesting for an interface. But we could also reference other protocols that are somehow important. So think of somebody coming up with like a decentralized follower system. You could just reference that smart contract from this profile. We define a key, we say 0x blah 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 now means the follower system, and anybody who has that can show the follower system that's read from the other smart contract. Or reputation, badges. You could link a decentralized Twitter feed from your profile. So not only can you link things that you can put in a JSON file, but you can also put things in here that are readable from a smart contract. And that's where it becomes really, really relevant. Because now I can interact with my profile with other smart contracts, while they can always check back if there's certain information present or things there, yeah.
Awesome, Our Social. Where does ENS and the kind of metadata you can add on ENS kind of fit into this in your content?
So ENS would be probably replacing the smart contract address of your 75 account, which is hard to remember, with something that's more rememberable.
Yeah.
So in a way, you could see the 75 account. It could be the resolver.
But you can add metadata to ENS. I guess I'm just trying to figure out where you see that in relation to this.
So having a key value store where you have 32 bytes, whatever you add is extremely flexible. I have no idea how ENS, what you can add there and how flexible this is. But I can add 1 million entries to my universal profile.
That's cool.
With literally unlimited bytes, if the gas is enough, right? So the flexibility is very high in what information I attach and how. And that's important because we don't know how these profiles will be used in the future, and whatever people want to come up with, right? And there's something else I made up called ES75Y JSON schema.
That's the joke.
That's my job, making shit up. But it's important because we have such a flexible key store, right? We need to come up with something how we define these keys and how these keys have to be read and parsed. And this ES75Y schema JSON schema actually is the worst way. It's the wrong way around. It's JSON schema. Basically, we have to find something where you see these little blocks here. You have like a name, that's the name of the key. You have the key, which is the actual key, how you would read it from the smart contract, the byte 32 key. And then we have to find key type, value content, value type. So that tells you how to parse out this data. Because it's stored in bytes, right? You need to know how you slice this. And for example, one really interesting thing is the second one, the LSP3 profile, that's the JSON linked. And the JSON linked is not just an encoded URI. It's actually, the content is a JSON URL, and if you read the spec, it will tell you that the first 4 bytes are the hash function, the next 32 bytes are the hash, and the rest is then the encoded URI. That means when you're downloading your JSON file, you already have a hash of that file. You can check it, you can verify that you got the right file. So it doesn't matter where you store this file. You could store this on IPFS, in Swarm, on a database, on your home computer, whatever. It doesn't anymore matter so much where we store it because the hash reference is already within the way of how you understand the key or the value. And there's other things like array types and stuff like this that I made up. Also mapping and so on. Point is, we can standardize a lot more of these JSON schemas, different new key types, whatever we need. Right? If some protocol says, hey, I need a key that is built up this way with these sliced pieces to whatever, a bit mask in the front and then something after that, we just could like standardize that, right? If people need that and use that, that's useful. And the cool thing is, if you have this, you can actually easily now build a library that we have built called ES75JS that literally allows you to import this JSON schema, a little bit like how we import the ABI in Web3.js. And you just say, get me the LSP3 profile, and the thing downloads everything, does the checks, knows how to get everything and verify the hash and so on. So we can make it very convenient, so you don't have to understand all of this as a developer, while at the same time we have a lot of flexibility on the smart contract. The more technical view looks like this, right? We could just have these 2 smart contracts, identity, relay services, or just directly. But we can also use this ES75Y to create actually better types of NFTs. And that's where the pause comes to. The point is, if we are creating a smart contract that represents one NFT or a set of NFTs, and we have the ability to add actually endless amount of key value data, we can make a very flexible NFT that is not just one JSON, but it could be having a verification, it could be have a list of multiple designers or multiple creators or artists that like work together on one piece. You could link other protocols that are maybe related to the NFT. Like let's say you have an NFT that changes over time based on some oracles or parameters. They could be referenced from the NFT, auto-verified by the smart contracts. So we can make far more complex NFTs. And I think that's exactly where we are right now seeing the NFT world hitting a little bit of a limit, right? After issuing Gibbies, they all realized, okay, that's cool, but what now? And here we can actually do a lot more. And the other thing is, because it's obviously ES75Y, we have an owner, and the owner is probably the issuer, and the issuer is allowed to change this. And the issuer could even be a smart contract that is only allowed to change certain slots and others don't. So you can build very complex ways of how these NFTs can change or not change, or what can be changed and when and so on. Could be even changed in voting, right? So very flexible NFTs and so on. And I will skip this for now. So ES75JS, what I said, like this library does this really easy. You just give it the schema, give it the address and the provider. And then you could just say either get me the LSP3 profile, and it gives you the thing decoded, which is the link, the hash, and the hash function. Or you say fetch data, and it downloads the whole thing and does the comparison. You could do that with any kind of bytes example, a asset of a 3D file. And there's a lot more in this for encoding, decoding, and getting this data really easily. That's just a developer tool to deal better with any type of 75 smart contract. This is the universal profiles. So in the universal profile, or like this ES75 account, that's actually a better way of interacting on-chain because it solves a lot of the problems that we have with plain keys. Plain keys have no information that are attachable, except you go on EtherScan and look at the public tag that EtherScan put there. And it has no easy way to control it except the private secret, right? The private key. So on Lukso, when we created this, because it's the blockchain for the new creative economy, we have to really rethink how this stuff works together. And obviously, a very important piece is identity, because if people create something, it's important who created it, when, why, what did he create, and so on. So the identity piece, that standard that I dropped there in 2017, really becomes essential here. But it also allows us to rethink how tokens and NFTs work. And that's very important when you think about how this works in concert. So if we really see Ethereum today and DeFi, big topic is ERC20 because it's the essence of basically all DeFi. And there was a decision back then, or a discussion when we proposed ERC20, where we said, should we inform smart contracts that when they receive an ERC20 token, that they can act on this? And the decision was made at the time, now we don't, we use this approved call mechanism, which you're probably all very familiar with. That literally like how DeFi works, right? That's the clunky DeFi way. But it's actually a better way of doing this, and the ERC is 223, like the first upgrade from the ERC20 standard, tried to do that by adding a token receive function. They just said, okay, you just implement a function called token received, and now when my token contract tries to send something to a smart contract, he just tries to call this function, and if it's there, the smart contract can react, which would be nice because that means I can send with one transaction a token and something happens automatically, not this clunky way how it's done right now. The problem is, if you have a universal profile, a smart contract-based account that you probably only deploy once, and then you want to use it for the next 10 years, right? I cannot add extra functions. So I can now add 223 token received, ERC721 token, whatever NFT received, whatever it's called, ERC20, ERC1820. I can add some 5 functions, and then I'm excluding literally every future asset that's coming, right? And to solve this, we not only need to rethink, okay, what kind of function would we need here, but also how these NFTs work. And the beauty of creating a new blockchain is whatever we are saying, you probably take for granted. In the beginning, let's say, right? In the beginning, you probably just simply, everybody just flows with whatever the basic standards is that are proposed. And that's very important if we want to have an actual creative economy. And on Ethereum, this is all very noisy, very messy. It's very hard to get new standards through, or even getting attention around them. And then trying to make everybody upgrade, impossible. So there's no way doing this on Ethereum. That's why Lukso is a great space for exactly this. So as we saw, you have your ERC75 account that has a key manager smart contract. Doesn't need to be, could be just a key. And it has something, or could have something called a universal receiver delegate. And this universal receiver function is exactly what I was talking about. So we defined this universal receiver, we call it LSP1. It's actually the first LSP. And that's a function it's basically just receiving a type and data. And because it's there, every future asset could call this function to inform the smart contract that it received something. And because my 75 account has a universal receiver delegate in one of the keys, reference as an address, it can forward every call to another smart contract. So now my universal profile can reactively react on any future asset. And really nice, for example, talk to the key manager again and move it somewhere, right? I receive an NFT, I want to have it in this vault. I receive an ES20, I want to have it in that vault. I received that whatever random thing I don't know, I want to reject it. That's how I can act on this. But the beauty is, my 75 account is the one which is relevant. That's the address. That's my root identity. That's the place that shouldn't change. So I deploy the smart contract once, and probably for that profile, right? I might have 10, but for that profile, that should never change. But these things are replaceable. I can just upgrade to a new key manager standard because somebody comes up and finds some extra feature that needs to be there. I can have a new universal receiver delegate, and that can be as simple as going to a website, click upgrade, and then now I have a new one. Given the fact that people know what they're doing. And that makes me interact with this kind of, like new kind of assets, for example. The other thing is, I can also reference any kind of new protocol, right? So if somebody comes up with something new that should be linked from my profile, somehow auto-react, maybe also have permissions to act through my profile as a key in there, I can just do that. And maybe a quick note on the key manager, which is very essential. Because I have now multiple keys, I can have now multiple devices controlling the same profile. I mean, you all know, like, nobody is probably importing his like MetaMask key into 2 MetaMasks, right? You probably have them separate. Are you okay? Okay, we have one guy here in the room. the advanced developers dealing with that. Yeah, but the problem is really like, because you want to keep the secret so safe, you probably never want to move it anywhere else, except maybe into a hardware wallet or whatever. But if I have a key manager and I can restrict the keys by what they can do, I can say, hey, this key can execute, but it can only talk to this one smart contract. The possibility of this key doing something bad is very limited. So now I can even give a key to a third-party website. I can just say, here, generate a key, handle all the transaction fees for me, do whatever you want with my profile, just talk to your DEX, smart contract only, right? Don't mess with other shit. That's possible, and that creates a user experience that we're used to from Web 2, right? And even more. But the other thing is, what I said before, is I can have now these kind of different assets that when they are, being received or transferred from someone to me, this asset can inform myself. And that's such an essential thing if you want to really create some kind of automated flows around anything, right? We want to be able to always be able to react on assets we receive with our account, determine whatever our action will be, like rejecting, moving it, do nothing, firing a lock just because our interface needs to update it, right? There's different kind of NFT standards that we are proposing. I will not go into this right now, but they allow you to make very unique NFTs, non-unique NFTs. They have different purposes, benefits, and difficulties. But they all need to be modified having a universal receiver, because obviously we want to have one function to be called and not 20 that people come up with. And that's very useful, like in a new network where the people that are working currently on our test network, they're really following these standards. Universal profiles, like the thing there. That was a very quick overview. I hope the sugar didn't kick in too much after these cupcakes. There's a lot of stuff that you can read up, and you can take a picture if you want to. But I also want to show one thing of how this can look like in real life. So currently we have a bunch of profiles on our test network, which is basically just a POA network running since a while. We did some digital fashion drops on the dematerialized marketplace. They're currently HODL only. They're sitting on these universal profiles on the test network. There's over 3,000 people that created automatically profiles the moment when they signed up. And as you, that's best. Okay, let me do this internet thing here. Let me get the internet working.
So Fabian, all of this is going to be compatible on mainnet Ethereum too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you could deploy universal profiles on mainnet. You could even be smart and like deploy the same universal profile on the same address in multiple chains. So there's a lot of things that can happen in the future. Currently, I'm more concerned about doing it on Lukso first, showing how it makes sense. But yeah,
I just wanted to make a point.
yes. Yes, that is like Lukso. We see Lukso also as the part of the Ethereum ecosystem. I think Ethereum is more than just the mainnet. It's actually now a lot of EVM chains, and that's why we have like this EVM, pillar and networks that do all of this talking. And there will be more, right, of these EVM networks in the future. So, but the benefit is standardization is easier on these new networks. Lukso itself is fully independent of Ethereum because it runs its own beacon chain, its own Casper consensus. Others are tied into Ethereum through some kind of bridge, staking, whatever mechanisms. But yeah, the point is, this is if it's an LSP or an ERC, it doesn't matter, right? This can be used on Ethereum, this can be used in any other network. But it makes it's easier to show this on a new network and also with a new set of users. The people that we expect using Lukso and also the people building on Lukso right now, that's startups that it's not necessary that they're on Ethereum. I mean, first off, mostly it's the price that holds them back. And second, in DeFi land, creative economy, that will merge at some point. Right now it doesn't yet much, doesn't really need to. But we already see here with this website that there's a bunch of people who seem to really like having a blockchain-based profile. Because lots of people, even though we didn't make this really obvious, upgraded and they put all their profile pictures and stuff up, right? And then you have like really funny things. So people seem to really go into that already. And the beauty is, once you have a smart contract-based profile, not only can you have a decentralized account that's fully controlled by you, but you can also interact on chain. And you can have all the cool blockchain stuff too. And we can have far better user experience, far more complex control, interact with assets in a far easier way. So I think that's the future, how it has to be. And we're going to show how it's done. That was it. Any questions? So any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so
Now the critical question comes.
thank you for the update because I've been following Lukso in Osaka, which is almost 2 years ago. And it felt like you went with this new blockchain, which we might call a sidechain, mostly for scalability reasons, I guess. Right now we are seeing the beginning of new rollups, particularly ZK rollups, that might at some point be EVM compatible, which I think would be great for the entire ecosystem. So since everything you showed us is basically built on top of EVM and there is no change to the underlying runtime, would you consider moving to one of these rollups?
No. Because like the networks is not only about like scalability. So obviously we all would like to have this one super blockchain that we're all going to use and it's unlimited and like all of this stuff. But the thing is also when you look at really what happened in blockchain in the last years, it's not only about you don't use the same network because okay it has some functionality and it works, but it also forms a certain type of community. And we all know the effect of being part of a blockchain, having Bitcoin early on, having Ether early on, and how this growth of the value of the network itself really accelerates the attraction around it and accelerates also the motivation and the ability for projects to build even more because they were early in, the price went up, and they kind of been part of this whole ecosystem. So a network itself is also its own ecosystem. And this creative economy, especially this new digital creative economy, does not have its own network yet. And having your own network where actually this value growth and you can be part of this value growth and this cross-compatibility that will start to exist and all of this can happen is essential. It's also essential for brands and other companies that come in and want to use this stuff to feel they're not coming late to the party and everybody already had the big fun and these 1,000 people in the beginning like had that super benefits and everybody just has a functionality now at high cost. They want to be kind of early on. And scalability, even if we have, let's say, 1,000 shards on Ethereum, the world is far bigger than that. So we need a lot more throughput. The way of how we build the Lukso network, obviously building on top of Ethereum, that's where I come from. It is the most advanced so far. Technology in blockchain, we're building on top of ETH2. So basically we have our own beacon chain. We're using Casper, means 100,000 possible validators. We are basically created a one-sharded network where we are on 2 parallel chains, so in the ETH1 chain and the ETH2 chain, and they're tightly connected, or they're synchronized through something called the Lukso orchestrator. And we can easily now add multiple shards. Once the zero-knowledge proof, what you were talking about, is solved, we can easily add 1,000 shards that can be quickly verified by every of the validators. We have to still solve the cross-shard communication problem. That's still another problem to be solved. But for the next 2 years, let's see, if we solve these kind of problems in the next 2 years, then that's great. I still think there's a reason to like have your own ecosystem for this kind of new group of people. Also a new group of users that's coming in. And the other thing is also the standardization. It's really hard to foster this kind of stuff, which is so fundamental, right? Like how your account stuff works. And do this on Ethereum. I mean, you will not get nobody to be adopting this right now because they first will want to see that this all makes a lot of sense and works, and then eventually they will go for it. For us, it's the fundament of how everything should work. And you as a project obviously want to be having these benefits that this gives you. We're building a browser extension that allows you to manage your universal profile. We're building a mobile app that allows you to manage your universal profile. There will be other people building, universal profile apps that manage your universal profile. And that creates this usability that we need to have in order to get actually real people to use blockchain. Without that, blockchain is like the top thing, but the cool thing they can do is the important part. And the blockchain is something that's just there. It seems to be working somehow magically, right? Yeah, you had a question.
And about this whole difficulties of pushing new standard on Ethereums, it's definitely easier to do it like here on Lukso, creating this new infrastructure, but wouldn't you run into the same problem in the future of
Sure.
So okay, so it's just like betting now in imposing new standards are really helpful for the futures.
So yeah, I mean obviously everything will get noisy. And there's no standard process with like hundreds of thousands of developers that will be somehow fast or easy. But we are having the ability to create a better fundament. I mean, literally the whole Ethereum space is running in ES20 still.
Yeah.
And that's 2050.
Yeah.
And not much has changed since then from that perspective, right? So there was a fundament created back then, still everything is running on it. If we're creating a fundament now, and what I can see, the flexibility you have with these accounts and this new kind of assets and how they can work together, it's just opens itself such a large Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Of things that can be created, that just these standards alone will bring a lot of possibilities.
So do you see also, like for example, if like this Lukso and ERC 725 is implemented, once it works, you see it as a possibility that it will then transfer to other chain because it has proven to be efficient?
Oh, it certainly will.
Like, okay, let's adapt this new
Yeah,
standard.
it certainly will. I think that will definitely happen. And then what will happen is people will build wallets that allow you to manage multiple profiles on multiple chains. Or maybe have some kind of meta profile that can direct and synchronize profiles on multiple chains. So that when you update your profile picture here, it's almost updated in all of them, or maybe it's only one holds the profile picture and the other only holds some control keys. Whatever people come up with, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it will be cross-chain at some point. But like one network in that space, it's already lots of activity. Let's get there first and let people figure out how they do this, move this to other chains. But yeah, I mean, the standards are there, the implementations are there. We're building the tools to make it even easier to deploy and all of this stuff. You can do that on Ethereum today if you want, right?
So about the coding profiles, like hiding the addresses behind the names, how would you fight against like scammers that would just like take the same user name?
Yeah, obviously that's exactly why we have the identicon everywhere. But on the end, like a system like ENS needs to be deployed on Lukso as well, right? You need to have a unique name system. But also the other thing I wanted to talk about is the references here of what NFTs are created. For example, it's the Fabricant, one of the most popular digital fashion brands.
They build a reputation of the address. Like you build a reputation on an address.
Exactly, you're basically building a reputation on an address, but also like what you own and what you created is all linked in the smart contract. So you can re-show this, you can rebuild a website like this, that it shows the same profile and whatever extra stuff you want to show, whatever extra protocols you have now you want to convince people to add to their profiles. This has no database right now. I mean, it's a caching layer, but it literally just reads from the smart contract and IPFS in this case for the images and the JSON documents. But these correlations, right? They don't exist on these basic just key and 7-to-1 contracts. There's no correlation nowhere. The correlation you get because you're using EthScan's API, right? That's how you know who has what and what happened. But it's not on a smart contract level. It's not automated. It's not easily. My idea is, I want to, if I lose all my stuff, or if I change my computer, I want to just remember my, let's say my LNS, the Lukso name system name, and my 5 friends that will re-establish everything. And I have my whole account back, right? With everything. Without it, I have to go to 5 places or wait for some websites to know my stuff still.
Awesome. We got to keep moving, but thank you, Fabian.